The recent SHA, or is it SHIF? The recent SHA theft takes us back to the initial theft. The initial theft happened in early 70s, 72, 73, somewhere there. I can't recall the exact year, but the information is what is important. It happened in the early 70s, where money from medical services was stolen. Today's episode, we are going to cover the theft that happened in the first ever known such theft. We are also going to look at the people who were connected to it, because that was the star news. That was the star news of the day. I remember, as young as I was, we used to have. It used to be in the papers daily. It used to be in the papers daily. Each day, it used to be in the headline. Those of you who can remember The Golden Bag by Justice Bosire, every day people would wake up in the morning, even in the news, to try to see where has the medical story reached. But because today we have that shisha or shif, yeah, sha, theft, maybe I have to talk about the initial theft. But let us look at the sha before we go to the initial theft. Sha is supposed to have replaced NHIF, where it was being said there were so many loopholes, and the loopholes in SHA are not only many, but even in large numbers. In SHA, we have cases where hospitals which were long not in use, where even grass is overgrowing, getting millions as compensation. We have cases where hospitals without bed capacity, which has no capacity for people to be admitted, not only claiming to have admitted people, but then they also claim to have operated people. And we have other cases where one individual, let us call that individual Raphael Saya, one individual, Raphael Saya, is alleged to have been admitted in an hospital in Kabete on such and such a day, and had a major operation at a hospital in Kabete. The same day, he's supposed to be in a hospital in Kawangware, and at the same day, he's supposed to have been admitted and undertaken the very same operation at a hospital in Kabiria and even Kangemi. Now you find that there are some same person, very many hospitals which are not even in the same town, and claiming maximum thing. That is what is happening in SHA. Now let us go to the initial theft in the medical services. The body, you know, today we call it SHA, isn't it? But or SHIF, Social Health Insurance Fund, but it used to be NHIF. So these things keep on changing names. And the body that we are going to talk about today is a body that today is called KEMSA. Today it is called KEMSA. But at that time, it was not called KEMSA. It changed its name, just like NHIF has changed into SHA. Now, it has changed so many times. We will not go into how many times this body has changed. But today it is called KEMSA. That time, it used to be called CMS, Central Medical Stores. Yeah, Central Medical Stores, CMS. Now, KEMSA now has a body has a board of governors where there is what do you call chief executive officer. But during those days, CMS, Central Medical Stores, had a director. It had a director who was, I think his rank was that of a deputy secretary. Deputy secretary was the name given to the deputy principal secretary. That time, we had a permanent secretary, and below the permanent secretary were two or a handful of deputy secretaries. So deputy secretary was like a deputy permanent secretary, deputy PS. Now, the head of medical services, the director of medical services, DMS, was of the same rank as a deputy secretary, where we could say that he was of the same rank as the deputy permanent secretary. The person who was the the one who stole money from the directorate from the KEMSA then was one called Zakaria Bukhala Shimechero. Zakaria Bukhala Shimechero. Coincidentally, he came from the same village with Dr. Khalwale. He came from the same village with Dr. Khalwale. That is Marinya. Now, Bukhala was the director of medical services. That is DMS. He headed CMS, which was Central Medical Stores. Today, Central Medical Stores, or KEMSA, is along Bunyala Road, not very far from Nyayo Stadium, but inside industrial area. But those days it was housed somewhere in Kenyatta National Hospital. It became large that it had to find bigger space at industrial area. Now, Bukhala Shimechero was charged and convicted of two things. He was charged and convicted of two things. One of them was that he had gone and seen. You see, people, there are those companies, Indian companies, that were supplying medicine to the central medical stores, there are those Indians whose companies had applied to supply medicine to that. He went to them and he was bribed. He was bribed. Was it 162? Okay, amount like that. Is it 162 or 172,000 shillings? I'm trying to, but I'm giving that figure so that you understand how money used to be a lot during those days. He was given, let's say, 162,000 shillings, so as to give those Indians a contract to supply medicine. So he was convicted of that. He was also convicted of conniving with other Indians who bought fake medicine from Bombay Street. Nowadays, you hear people saying you have a fake thing from Kirinyaga Road. Yes, even in Bombay, there used to be, and maybe there is still, such people who would sell you fake things. So there's a lot of fake drugs that was brought in from the back streets of Bombay and sold to the central medical services. As I said, he was charged and convicted of two offenses: getting a bribe and getting a bribe to facilitate some people to supply medicine to the Central Medical Store. And 2, he was convicted for organizing with crooks to bring fake medicine from Bombay. The magistrate who was handling that case was Senior Resident Magistrate S.K. Sachdeva. The magistrate was S.K. Sachdeva. Sachdeva later became a High Court judge. He rose up in ranks and became a High Court judge. Now let us talk about S.K. Sachdeva. He is the father of Juripesa. He's the father of Juripesa. He's the person who initiated, and he's the founder of the cases where you hear judges or magistrates being seen aside, given something, and then they change the case. His was so serious that it even annoyed a one-time Chief Justice Coker to say that that person is very corrupt. But later on, he ended up being a judge of the High Court. One of the changes in the new constitution is the creation of Judicial Service Commission. Because today for you, you have seen people when they want to become judges or whatever, they undergo an interview at the Judicial Service Commission, which is aired on TV. But today, I mean not today, but those days, when somebody was being made a judge, leave alone those 1970 what, even as late as recently, when my nephew was made the Chief Justice, Chesoni. Under those conditions of those days, it was just very easy. It was very easy. The president just declared so and so is the Chief Justice. I want also to remember that we had an African Chief Justice called Mwendwa. Mwendwa. He was of the Mwendwa family, the Kinakitili Mwendwa, Kinanyiva Mwendwa. He was whatever in that family. This fellow was working in the AG's chamber. He was working in the AG's chamber, and he was working in the AG's chamber, and he used to put on the coat. He used to put on the coat and do some matatu business. So one day he was called to see the president. He was called to see the president, and he suspected. He talked to people. People said, whatever action the president wants to take against you, go with 10,000 shillings for Gatundu Self-Help Hospital. So he went there with 10,000, and upon giving the president, oh, hii pesa ni ya Gatundu Self-Help Project, the president told him, I have called you because I've made you the Chief Justice of Kenya. So Sachdeva, even when other members of the judiciary knew that Sachdeva was corrupt, he ended up as a judge of the High Court. In those days, we only had the High Court in Kenya. The High Court, where we have the Supreme Court, is where the High Court was. That was the High Court in Kenya. And then we had the Court of Appeal was the East African Court of Appeal. East African Court of Appeal. So you find that Sachdeva ended up being the High Court. So it's like today the father of corruption being taken to the Supreme Court. That is Sachdeva, who was the magistrate, senior resident magistrate, who handled the case. Then we go to the prosecutor. The prosecutor was Karugu. Karugu is the most principled lawyer Kenya has ever had. And at that time, he was the deputy public prosecutor. That time he was the deputy public prosecutor, which you can say the deputy attorney general. As Kenya was during those days, the Attorney General was the legal government advisor and also the head of prosecution. With the new constitutional dispensation, it was divided that now the director of public prosecution is independent of the Attorney General. So the person deputizing the Attorney General at first used to be called Deputy Director of Prosecution, DPP. Now we call him Director of Public Prosecution. Those days it used to be Deputy Public Prosecutor. Nowadays it's the DPP, Deputy Director. Today is Director of Public Prosecution. Those days it used to be Deputy Public Prosecutor. Karugu was assisted by Sharad Rao. Sharad Rao was a senior assistant state counsel. It was a very strong prosecution case. And who was the advocate defending Shimero? The advocate defending Shimero was one S.M. Otieno. S.M. Otieno was a very good lawyer, but in this case, he lost the case. In those years, in the 70s, let us say the whole of 70s, from 71 to 79, there were some few lawyers who never lost a case. One was the same SM Otieno from Nyalgunga, and the other was Georgiadis plus few others. It was even said in those days that whenever a criminal hired those lawyers, then he would have won the case even before taking plea. But in this case, as you have seen, SM Otieno lost the case. SM Otieno is known for when he died. I think you have heard of Lady Wambui Otieno. Wambui Otieno, she was born into the Wayaki family in Kiambu, but got married to SM Otieno. When he died, they wanted to bury him in Ngong, Upper Matasia. The widow wanted to bury him at Ngong, Upper Matasia. But the clan, his clan, that is known as Umirakager, his clan, the Umirakager, fought to have the case taken to Nyalgunga, that is in Siaya. And who was the lawyer for the Umirakager? It was Justice Quach. Justice Quach. And who is Justice Quach? He was a judge of the Court of Appeal. You know, there was a DJ or a radio presenter who was called Quach. I think it was Edward Quach. He died recently. He was the son to Justice Quach. Justice Quach is still alive today. Now let us talk about the main man. Let us talk about the main man. The main man is Zakaria Bukhala Shimechero. As I said, he was born in a place called Madinya, huko kwa kina bullfighters. Actually, Madinya Stadium is known very much for bullfighting. Now, when his case, a lot of people say that he was a deputy commissioner of police. I tend to disagree. I tend to believe that Zakaria Bukhala Shimechero was an assistant commissioner of police for the following reasons. One, when he was in the police, there was only one deputy commissioner of police. If you look at the police in 1990, the Kenya police had about a dozen deputy commissioners of police. 1990. Places like Rift Valley was headed by a commissioner of police. They even introduced another rank called senior deputy commissioner. But I want to believe that Shimero was an assistant commissioner because there was only one deputy commissioner of police whose name was Michael Arum. He was the deputy commissioner of police and director of administration, Kenya Police Headquarters. We had several senior assistant commissioners who were not even more than 5. And even Ben Gethi, who was the head of the GSU, he was an assistant commissioner. So I tend to believe that Shimechero was an assistant commissioner, and very many people are unable to differentiate between an assistant and a deputy. So they cannot differentiate an assistant commissioner and a deputy commissioner of police. He joined the police service among the very first team that was taken in as cadet inspectors, or as they used to call them that day, cadet sub-inspectors. He rose over the rank until the rank that I believe was an assistant commissioner. When first of all, he was appointed as the director of, he was appointed as director of squatter, yeah, not refugee. He was appointed as director of squatter rehabilitation, relocation, squatter relocation. He is the one and only person who occupied that. You see, we had Kina Wilson Gashanja, who was the director of lands and settlement. But then we had another director who was in charge of resettling the squatters, and that is him. So at one time it was decided, and his rank then was a deputy secretary. Yeah, he was a deputy secretary. So at that time, maybe it was discovered that we did not have more squatters, or the squatters had been for so few that they did not now need a director. Then he was taken to be the director of the medical services. And when he was the director of medical services, that is how he he was involved in stealing of the money. The farm at first was called Central Medical Stores. Then it had a few changes. I can't recall all of them. Then it changed that it is now called KEMSA. It is now called KEMSA. Thank you for watching my video.